Vigils have been held right across Ireland and indeed in Northern Ireland as well to remember Ashling Murphy. She's a teacher who was killed while out jogging in County Offaly in the Republic of Ireland. And what makes this case perhaps even more horrific than it would have otherwise have been was the case that it happened at 4 o'clock in the middle of the day. The worst thing is, of course, that this is not an isolated incident and there is a real need to tackle violence against women and girls. Strategies for women's safety need to be put in place, and just this week a public consultation was launched in Northern Ireland on this very issue. Joining me now is Pam Cameron. Pam's the DUP member of the Northern Ireland Assembly for South Antrim and someone who has taken a huge interest in these key issues. Pam, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. First of all, of course, you'll want to reflect on that horrific murder of Ashling Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Arlene. Good to see you. Good to be here on GB News today. A horrific murder. I think everybody is very shocked to hear of this murder, which has happened in our neighbouring Southern Ireland. A horrific case, and I think just visually seeing those pictures of this beautiful, young, vibrant woman and understanding what has happened to her in broad daylight is quite horrendous, and we really do. We're all thinking now at this time of her family and her friends and what they must be going through at such a horrific time.
And indeed, those little children that she was teaching as well, it must be so very difficult for them to try and understand what has happened to this young, vibrant woman who was part of their life and then has been so cruelly taken away. Pam, you've worked for a long time with Women's Aid on issues such as domestic violence. There's no doubt that the COVID restrictions have had an impact, not in this case, and I accept that, but it certainly had an impact on the rise in domestic violence, not just in Northern Ireland, but right across the UK.
That's absolutely right, Arlene. And we've been given some figures just recently, even on the back of Christmas, which has just passed, by the PSNI here, stating an increase in domestic abuse incidents over the Christmas period, 1,959 calls for help. Between December the 14th and January the 1st, it's an increase of 12% on the previous year. And we do know, of course, that Northern Ireland is the only part of the UK without a specific strategy on tackling violence against women and girls in place. So we also have another horrific statement which has been provided by Women's Aid in recent days, which talks about more women are murdered in Northern Ireland as a result of domestic violence than any other part of Western Europe per head of capita. That's not a statistic that any of us ever want to see or hear of, but it certainly makes an even greater case for ensuring that we do have a suitable strategy going forward and that we do all work together to ensure that this type of violence against women and girls ends.
And of course, you've mentioned the fact that Northern Ireland has, per head of population, not a very good record in relation to domestic violence. In fact, we're the worst in the United Kingdom per head of population. So it is good news, I suppose, in a way, that this new strategy has been launched this week by the Executive Office to look at all of this. But of course, strategies are one thing. It's about how we deal in the actualities and in actions to deal with this and the change of culture. Do you see the strategy being an enabler for that change of culture, Pam?
Yes, I think it should be. By rights, it should be. I mean, certainly, I've been in the Assembly since 2011, and you'll be well aware that my maiden speech was actually on domestic violence and abuse. So 10, 11 years ago, we were very much looking for awareness around the issue of domestic violence and abuse, and that has certainly come over the years, and we certainly have much greater awareness of the issues and what's happening, and certainly what happens very often. Domestic violence and abuse is within the home and by people that we know. We're presuming that this is not the case for Ashling, but we do know it's a huge issue. But I did want to touch upon the fact that we now have in Northern Ireland very recently launched White Ribbon NI, and I've been supporting the formation of that organisation. And they are an organisation who are asking us all to pledge never to commit, condone, or remain silent about violence against women and girls. And I think that's really, really important. And just today, they've actually put up a post, and I want to quote from that post because I think it says it all, where it talks about violence against women and girls starts with ideas, words, and thoughts long before it becomes action. If we are to create a society where women are safe, we must challenge attitudes and beliefs that lead to violence against women. So the need for preventative and proactive movement forward cannot be overstated. And we believe that men and boys have an important role to play as allies and agents of change. We must all stand together and refuse to stay silent on the issue. And I think that really does sum up what needs to be done. It belongs to all of us, but I think the voices of men and boys in particular are very, very powerful in this. And we understand, obviously, that there are many good men and boys out there that would never dream of committing such heinous crimes.
Well, it was. I just wanted
their voice is powerful.
Yeah, I just wanted to finish on that, actually, Pam, to say that, I mean, it is a change in culture that is needed. We can talk about violence against women and girls. We've been talking about it for quite some time, you and I, how we can change the attitudes. But unless and until it becomes a change in culture for those men who think it is appropriate to engage in even low-level violence, that it is wrong and the stigma is there against them. So that's the sort of thing, surely, that we need to see men engaging with right across, not just Northern Ireland, but of course globally as well.
I think that's absolutely right. I think men and boys of all ages and all walks of life need to be, and as a society, we need to be more aware of the issues and learn what is appropriate behaviour and what is not. And that can start, obviously, from childhood. And we all certainly, I think, even need to be educated in, in terms of even consent. What is that? What does that actually mean? In terms of how we behave. So I think there's much more to be done, and I think we all need to stand together, and we need to use this brutal murder to fight against this in the future.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us this afternoon.